Tonight,
Bienvenido a Cuba.
Canada's Chrétien in Castro's Cuba.
The winds of change are blowing through our hemisphere.
But can a Canadian visit ease a dictator's grip? And the ultimate goal, keeping hockey in Canada.
CTV News with Sandy Ronaldo.
Good evening. Fidel Castro used Prime Minister Jean Chrétien's arrival in Havana tonight as a launch pad for a diplomatic missile aimed at America. In an explosive welcoming speech, the Cuban president blasted the U.S. trade embargo as genocide and a new version of the Holocaust. For his part, Chrétien responded with a veiled plea for Castro to improve Cuba's record on human rights. CTV's Ottawa Bureau Chief Craig Oliver reports on two leaders who, in the space of a few hours, seem to have become fast friends.
The Prime Minister was greeted on the tarmac by Cuban President Fidel Castro, dressed in his characteristic military fatigues. The Cubans believe that Chrétien's visit marks the end of a generation of political isolation by other hemispheric leaders, many of whom will be following Chrétien here, all ready to break, as Canada has for years, with America's Cuban policy. In his welcoming remarks, Castro noted that fact.
No state should pretend to have the right to starve another people to death or let it die from diseases. That is genocide. That is turning a nation into a ghetto and imposing on it a new version of the Holocaust.
In reply, Chrétien reminded his host, ever so gently, that new trade and aid with the Americas may require a let-up on political repression.
This century and this millennium is nearing a close. The winds of change are blowing through our hemisphere and indeed around the world, and we must all adapt.
The two leaders opened a new airport terminal which will allow Cuba to increase its best source of foreign income, tourism. Then they toured the terminal, which was built with Canadian construction know-how and a Canadian export loan of $30 million. Some of the political prisoners released by Cuba to Canada 3 weeks ago watched the events in Havana on television, and they said they hoped Castro might release more prisoners sometime soon.
Well, I think that it is a good opportunity to demand to the Cuban government the political change that the Cuban people need, at the same time, the liberty of all the political prisoners.
During his visit here, the Prime Minister has two lengthy one-on-one meetings with Castro himself. Canadian officials, however, are already playing down the prospect of any breakthroughs, particularly any major concessions from Castro on human rights. Sandy?
Craig, if that indeed is the case, what does the Prime Minister have to come away with to consider this visit a success?
Well, the Canadians are going for the long term, they're saying. That is, Chrétien will build a relationship with Castro here, and if this window of opportunity the Canadians and many others see develops, that is, if there is a chance to bring Castro into the larger world of Latin American politics, then Canada would be positioned very well to help, particularly if, as many people suspect, the Clinton administration is ready to start mending its relations with Castro.
Now, does success hinge on any sort of, any commitment on the part of Cuba to improve human rights?
Well, the Canadians will not admit that, but certainly you would expect that that is the least that Chrétien could take away from this. After all, what he is offering Castro is political legitimacy, a breakthrough. Chrétien is the first of the Western Hemispheric leaders in 20 years to visit Castro. This is an important moment for the Cubans. The least he could do is offer Chrétien something back. If he doesn't, Chrétien may leave here looking like something of a patsy. He's allowed Castro to polish up his image and give him nothing in return.
Craig, let's talk about Castro's speech in his opening remarks. He used words like genocide and Holocaust to describe the impact of the U.S. embargo on Cuba. Any reaction?
Life by a sorceress.